You just went and made a new dinosaur?
Probably not a good idea.
Think it'll scare the kids? Everyone, remain calm.
Hello, I'm the Universal Critic. I talk about whatever I want, whenever I want. Who remembers when the first Jurassic Park came out, all the way back in the summer of 1993? I don't, because I wasn't born until December of 1993. Regardless, Jurassic Park became an instant classic for me and just about everyone else, becoming the highest-grossing film ever at that point, with returns just shy of $1 billion, which back then was almost unheard of. Obviously, sequels were inevitable, even 20 years later, and that brings us to today's film, Jurassic World. Before I begin, I should probably clarify that this is a sequel to the first film and only to the first film. This film is perfectly content to act as if The Lost World and Jurassic Park 3 never happened, and I'm sure that very few people in this world would argue that that's a bad thing. Set 20 years after the events of the original film, the park has been reopened under the name of Jurassic World and has gone on to unparalleled success, becoming a major international tourist destination. With that kind of exposure, the company in charge of the park worries that the public will become complacent and bored with the attractions, and so goes about finding ways to up the ante. They bring in animal trainer Owen Grady, played by Chris Pratt, to train the velociraptors, despite Grady's protests. One of the executives, played by Bryce Dallas Howard, orders the creation of their first genetically modified dinosaur, the Indominus Rex, which the company's CEO, played by Irfan Khan, hopes will be bigger, better, and of course, scarier. But in typical Michael Crichton story fashion, all this will come crashing down on their heads, and oh boy does it ever. While it's no surprise that this film has absolutely no hope whatsoever of matching the original, it's still a pretty tense and visceral thrill ride, which is exactly what I was looking for in a Jurassic Park movie. The plot is simplistic, just as the original was. People come to Dinosaur Island, dinosaurs escape, dinosaurs go on a rampage, humans fight back and run for their lives, and just narrowly escape and live happily ever after. A pretty traditional setup for a monster movie, though it does incorporate a lot of interesting themes to make it stand out in that genre, just like the original. The biggest theme of this film is one that was very prevalent in the original, the hubris that comes with playing God and trying to control nature. This is best shown in the subplot with Chris Pratt, with him training the raptors to obey his commands. This may seem absurd, but they do establish in the film that the raptors are arguably the most intelligent of the dinosaurs in the park. I know, in real life they were nowhere near as intelligent as they are in this film series, but at least in universe, this makes sense. After all, we train marine mammals to do this sort of thing all the time, albeit under extremely unethical circumstances, and that's reflected nicely here. And I like the fact that the movie sticks to its moral about the human and animal worlds needing to be separate. Chris Pratt has a certain bond with the raptors, yes, and they're definitely marvelous, intelligent animals, but at the end of the day, they're still wild animals. We can respect them, and we must respect them, but we can't be with them. Despite that heavy theme, this film is not exactly that taxing on the brain. I admire it for trying to be more intelligent than it really is, but overall it's really more about summer fun than any major ethical or scientific issues. But to be fair, the original was much the same way, although you could argue it was a lot more restrained than this film is. But like any sequel, Jurassic Park has to up the ante in order to succeed, and it delivers on that front considerably. In the first film, the park hadn't opened yet, so when things went wrong, there were less than 20 people on the island. Now, when things go wrong, there's 20,000 people on the island. It's a great way to give size and scope to the events, and a sense of peril to, at the very least, rival that of the original, though I don't think it could really surpass it. One element I really did enjoy about this film is that it incorporates some things that were in the original novel, but didn't make it into the first film, probably because of time, or money, or technology. The park in this film seems much more complete, with hotels and shops and attractions which help generate a certain theme park atmosphere. Also, the idea of a pterodactyl aviary was in the book, and it's used to great effect here. The film extrapolates on those elements too, adding in the use of prehistoric sea creatures in a SeaWorld-like attraction, which has a A really great moment in the climax, by the way. With all that, this film is marginally closer to the novel than the original was, at least aesthetically, as the tone of the book was much darker and frankly smarter than that of any of the films. Another element of the film that really won me over was its reverence for the original. The film is loaded with references to the first film, both visual and spoken, although fair warning, the spoken ones are not exactly subtle. The visual ones are the most numerous and the most amusing, with homages to stuff like the T-Rex attack and raptor attacks from the original, which are of course classic and untouchable scenes that everyone knows and loves. The spoken references are amusing, but weaker. We have a whole bit where a park employee gets chewed out by his boss for wearing a t-shirt from the original Jurassic Park, and he goes on about how the original was so much better and how the dinosaurs alone were enough to wow everyone back in the day. Subtlety? What's that? Overall, I give Jurassic World a high big screen rating. It has its flaws, but I wouldn't say any of them are that much greater than any of the flaws you'd find in the original, and they are certainly much lesser than the flaws of the second and third films. I'm the Universal Critic. I talk about whatever I want, whenever I want. Goodbye.